Okay, so it looks like that's recording. I'm going to share my screen. All right, there we go. All right, so let's get started. Welcome to Austin Nonprofit Meetup. I'm Nancy Manning, founder of this meetup and of Power Your Mission. For about a year and a half, we conducted these meetups in person in Austin, and then with COVID, we moved online. And as a result, we're able to open this meetup to people, I was saying nationwide, but as of today, I'm going to say worldwide, because we have folks today from as far away as New York City and the United Kingdom. So that's pretty exciting for us to broaden our reach like this. Also, I don't know if this is new to meetup.com, but you can now join this meetup on that platform from anywhere in the world. And I'll talk about that at the end of today's meetup. Okay, so I'm trying to get it to, oh, there we go. All right, let's take care of some housekeeping matters for just a couple of minutes. One, our co-host is Shannon Mantrum. Once again, many of you know her. There's Shannon. Hi, Shannon. She's my rock star who helps me with just about everything. If you have any issues during this meetup, on your chat bar at the bottom, you can choose to privately chat with Shannon, and she is an expert at handling all kinds of weird issues. Okay. Now, we are asking you not to use the chat bar at all during the time that the speakers are speaking, because one, it's distracting to the speakers, and two, we have a time at the end of the meetup for your questions. And for those of you who come regularly, you will see that we, just for your own ease, are providing a question format. So rather than writing this whole thing out in your chat box, I have a question for Timothy at CAG, you would just go Q for CAG or Q for BBVA. So that's, this is something easier for you. It's not set in stone, but will help you when we get to the question. Also, please leave your microphone on mute. Some of you may have dogs, for instance, or door knockers, so just try to keep it a little bit quiet. Now, I would like to introduce our wonderful speakers. As many of you know, I always attempt to find a variety of types of speakers and of locations to help broaden your range of information on our topic. And today we have Timothy Shook, Chief Operating Officer of Continental Automotive Group, Tiffany Larew, who is the Manager, Employee Relation at CAPTRUST Community Foundation, and Sache Cantu, VP Community Giving Manager from BBVA. So let's begin today's topic with Timothy Shook. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen so you can see Timothy better.
Okay. Welcome. I'm in Austin, Texas. I work for a local family here that owns multiple dealerships. So the way dealerships work, Austin Subaru being one of them, and that's the one in particular that I'll go into some more detail on. But basically, we have a franchise. We are a franchisee, so franchise relationship. Basically, car dealerships, even though they might say like Subaru or INFINITI or Honda, they're owned by different varying, some are publicly traded, some are private. A couple of them are actually owned by the manufacturer. There's one in Manhattan for Mercedes that Mercedes-Benz owns. So here we are in Austin, and I've worked with the company for 14, 15 years now as their COO. We have our own marketing agency as well that I helped create about 10 years ago with a focus on charitable giving. We have about 750 employees and 10 locations. So the family that I work for, they live here as well in Austin, and we really like to focus on giving back to our local community here. So even though we are affiliated with national brands, Most of the giving that our organization does is focused here locally in Austin, Texas, the Hill Country, surrounding areas. Sometimes we'll spread out a little bit further depending on where the request is coming from and what the need is. With regards to corporate citizenship and kind of what it means to our company, our mission statement is 3 words. It's transformational, not transactional. So what we like to do is create transformational relationships, not transactional ones. And that's with our employees, that's with our customers, that's with the local charities that we partner up with. We're hoping to transform and create something better through the partnerships. And the areas that we provide support to, typically they will tie into what is passionate with the rest of our company. So we'll have a lot of stuff will be pet focused. We'll do some things that are environmentally focused. We're passionate about kids, the local children's hospital, homelessness in our city through a couple different organizations. So we have some main silos that we commit a significant amount of funds to, and then we do that continually, year after year after year. One of our biggest partnerships through Austin Subaru is with Austin Pets Alive. They're a local profit here in the city of Austin. I actually, as of 2 years ago, I'm on their board of directors as well. But we've been partnered with them for the past 10 years. So we contribute, over $100,000 a year to that particular organization. But that one, the way that it started was we were getting requests from advertising agencies to sponsor, it was actually the newspaper, CAPTRUST 10K downtown. So it was a 10K race, and they said that our $10,000 sponsorship, part of that money was going to go to the children's hospital. I said, okay, well, how much of it's going to go to the children's hospital? Well, long story short, after talking to our account rep, supervisor, it turned out $500 of the $10,000 was going to go to the children's hospital. So we decided that was the end of sponsoring events that say that they're charity focused, but really it was an event for that particular business. And we just didn't find it to be a genuine avenue for the nonprofit to raise funds. So we simply started creating events for Austin Pets Alive. So one of the events that we've done, well, we're not able to do it this year because of COVID, is called Paddle for Puppies. So we actually created an event, partnered with them, and all of the registration funds go to Austin Pets Alive. But it's something that all of our employees can get involved with as well, which is something I'm really passionate about. So that's kind of our biggest partnership, and we do a ton of different things with them. So going down to like the different types of support that we provide as a automobile dealership to different places or different organizations. So we'll sponsor, events, random events. Most of them have to have some type of charity tie-in with them. For our larger commitments, we'll do vehicle raffles where we'll either give away a vehicle completely or we'll give away the equivalent of like a 3-year vehicle lease to where they can buy raffle tickets and win a 3-year lease on a Mercedes-Benz or something like that. And those values are, it's like $25,000 range. And then sometimes we'll do giveaways of a vehicle just where we'll donate the entire vehicle to the raffle, and that might be in the $25,000 to $50,000 range. We often offer up our facilities for use. We happen to have very large facilities, fortunately for us. So we'll do various things. people can have like board meetings in either our showroom or our conference room, sometimes smaller meetings. There's something downtown called the Turkey Trot every year that we started sponsoring. It's like 20 to 25,000 people downtown every Thanksgiving morning. They basically run, like, I think it's a 5K or something, for Caritas, a local nonprofit that we're deeply engaged with. Anyways, so these races, they have what's called packet pickup, where you go and you get your shirt and you get your little race packet, and you might get some other like swag type items. But we allow our facility to be used for packet pickup because we have a lot of parking and a lot of space where people can come in and they can pick up their packets, which is also good for us because we get on-site activation for a couple thousand people just simply. And this particular one is done through our Honda dealership, where they go through our facility to pick up their packet. That event, we actually do raffle off like a brand new Honda Accord of like $30,000, and the full proceeds go to Caritas. So that particular raffle, we will donate a $30,000 car, which will probably cost us, maybe $27,000 out of our pocket, but then the raffle might raise like $40,000. So we come out of pocket 27, but the charity gets 40. So it's a pretty good deal for them, and we've been doing that for a few years now. We also do donation drives in our stores. So our auto dealerships, we'll get probably 100 or so customers per day per location coming through our service and sales departments. And so we'll do toy drives for like Brown Santa, coat drives for coats for kids. We do pet supplies drives for the Austin Humane Center, Austin Pets Alive, Clear the Shelters. We partner with the PALS program for Meals on Wheels. A lot of our employees participated, and we wrote letters to seniors during COVID. Then we also do canned food drives. We have some volunteering that we do. There's a 3M half marathon that actually runs by one of our properties. Austin's a very active city with regards to these like outdoor events. Anyways, one of them comes right by our store. So we set up a water station to help out. We also do participate citywide cleanups for Keep Austin Beautiful. And then some of our teams will go, and it'll be a company sponsored event where we will do like meal prep and serve at the soup kitchen. And then as far as like some unique support that we do, often we get hit up for like silent auction donations. So we can do that. Usually it's a vehicle detail. Because it doesn't really matter what kind of car you have at that point, we can just clean it inside and out. We are partnering with some type of military. I should have the name of it. I don't. It's something similar to Wounded Warriors. It might even be that. But basically, one of our stores is donating a vehicle, like a vehicle we would typically wholesale that's maybe been in a collision. And then our collision center is donating the labor to fix the vehicle. So we're fixing it up for a soldier. We're actually really close to Fort Hood, which is a very large military base here in Texas. I think it might be one of the larger ones in the US. And then sometimes we'll have like during the NCAA like Final Four basketball championship, INFINITI had sponsored that for a few years. So customers would come in and they would be able to shoot like free throws in our showroom. And then every time they made a basket, like we would donate more money to the particular charity. Now, as far as like range of support, for the most part, we will, if the request is coming from an employee or from a customer, and this is just our stance as a local small business, we donate at least $250 every time. If it's from a customer or if it's from an employee, it doesn't matter what it is, we donate $250. We always try to have room in our budget for that. Now, sometimes depending on who's asking and what type of customer they are, if they've done a lot of business with us, if their family's done a lot of business with us, maybe if they serve on the board or if they personally volunteer for a particular organization, or if our employees are passionate about it, you know, those one-off requests might go up to like $2,500. Now for our long-term partners, and those, you know, on like an event basis, it might be $5, $10, $15, $20, $25, $30,000 per instance. Those are ones that usually we have to be very committed to not only the cause, but the senior leadership at that organization. And unfortunately, and I don't know if this is how it is everywhere, but here, unfortunately, there's a lot of turnover in the nonprofit organization. So the more stable the leadership is in the organization and the more stable the point of contact, the more likely it is for our organization to make a commitment and then renew that commitment and grow that commitment year over year over year. If the point of contact keeps changing and we have to align our businesses over and over again, it becomes very labor intensive for us. And then it also comes down to, you know, a lot of these agreements, because they're not really, they are kind of like donations, but they're sponsorships that there are certain things that are expected or committed from the nonprofit. And our particular organization pays very close attention to, did the nonprofit do what they said they were going to do? Were they in communication with us? Was it a well-run event? For example, one of our brands is Mercedes-Benz. We are very, very cognizant of the brand image for that particular brand. So we wouldn't just partner them up with a random organization. It would have to be an organization that would be able to put on something of that caliber to match with that brand. Subaru and Honda are a little more, you know, laid back, but still we expect a certain level of professionalism and just execution. And then another thing that we do, so Subaru, for example, they might have a partnership with Make-A-Wish nationally. So in times when that happens, we will typically support the local Make-A-Wish chapter as a franchise, but that's at our discretion. We usually choose to do that, but that doesn't mean that all Subaru dealers everywhere do that. In fact, our Subaru dealership spends more money on events and donations than any other Subaru dealership in the country, which is, I mean, it's pretty cool to be able to say that and to be involved as involved as we are. With regards to kind of like how a nonprofit should seek our support, we have a little, you know, contact form on the website, but email submissions are the best. It's the easiest way for us to track it. And then typically, you know, we'll ask our first response back. We'll ask if the individual making the request is a customer of ours. And if they are a customer of ours, then we look them up in our database to see what type of customer they are, how many times have they been in, you know, what type of transactions, you know, how is the relationship with that particular customer. And then we kind of base our decision from there. And the things that stand out, you know, in a positive manner on these applications are, it's definitely okay to send more than one request if you don't get a response. I can't speak for the other organizations, but we get hit up daily by multiple organizations. So, you know, we could come in and there could be 5, 6, 7 requests. And then if those don't get processed, you know, eventually there's just a dozen or so requests that we're having to sift through. And so it's okay to send, you know, an additional inquiry. And we definitely look for in the cover letters, if the person has mentioned how our particular business ties in as a good fit. And then obviously the tone, you know, if they are polite and not frustrated in making the request, and then making sure that the need is carefully spelled out and also how these funds will be used. So we don't typically get excited for just general donation requests. We would like, what is the specific need? Who's it going to be impacting? You know, and how can we help specifically? Some of the things that are, you know, kind of negative or maybe get filtered right away are letters that come in with to whom it may concern, something that, you know, really, really long, or someone who's insisting on an in-person meeting, which honestly, even before COVID, we just didn't do that. We only do in-person meetings with our really, really long-term substantial partners. Everything else can be handled over the email or over phone. And then with regards to, you know, what we like to see out of the, you know, from our side, what makes it like good for us, obviously, is just doing what they said that they would do, you know, with the sponsorship dollars, to where if they said, hey, you know, for example, we want to build a well for fresh drinking water somewhere. Okay, that's great. Everything's good. But then a month later, we get, if they send us a letter or an email and there's photos of the well and photos of the people that it's impacted, that goes a lot further for us for wanting to renew again next year or to do something further. So we want to see how those dollars were actually used. And then the most important part for our organization is just how easy it is to get along with the person that is the main point of contact at the charity. For example, if we've got an event coming up and we shoot over an email or a text message or a phone call because we have questions about it, or really anything along the way, if the charity or nonprofit is not communicating back with us in a timely manner, that becomes very frustrating for us. And we simply shift our focus to the organizations that are committed to having a strong communication, having a good relationship, and then kind of moving forward from there. So I hope I didn't take up too much time.
No, in fact, I got to tell you, as you were talking, I was thinking about 20 questions I had, but I got to tell you, when you said how critical the stable leadership of a nonprofit is, I thought, you know what? That's a whole meetup. You just gave me a whole nother idea for a meetup. That is so important to hear someone like you say that, because it is a big issue in the nonprofit world. So thank you very much. And I'll wait and see if people come up with some of the same questions I have. But let's go ahead and move on to Sache.
Hey there, good afternoon, everybody. I am Sache Cantu. I serve as the Community Giving Manager for BBVA in the US. Prior to joining my role in the world of private philanthropy, I actually worked directly in the nonprofit sector for over a decade, both in giving and volunteering campaigns, as well as corporate and foundation government relationships and the development side of the shop. So I just want to kind of share that as a precursor to our conversation today. Also recognizing that while I hope to speak to some of our intention and perspective on corporate citizenship, there is a particular lens when it comes to charitable contributions and the work that we do in community giving. So those of you on the line may or may not be familiar with BBVA. We are actually part of a global financial services organization that's headquartered in Madrid, Spain. Our financial services include commercial, retail, and wealth management products, and we have over 125,000 employees worldwide. For us, we actually rebranded last year to be aligned with our global footprint. And here in the US, that actually entails 7 states that are primarily located in the Sun Belt region. And our purpose as a business, as an organization, and also as a team is to bring the age of opportunity to everyone. And I think the beautiful thing about that statement is also reflecting that it is very mission driven, and it has a core purpose to our banking and the business that we do. So how we think about really aligning our corporate citizenship efforts to the bank strategic plan, and also ensuring that we serve low and moderate income communities. We'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. We really focus our efforts from a corporate citizenship perspective on 2 core elements. The first one is around financial inclusion and improving the financial health of our customers and communities. And the second piece is actually helping our clients transition to a sustainable future. So a lot of the work that we've done to really build up our program to realign to our current 5-year strategic plan is also based on aligning our work to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and then recognizing and also owning the role that business has a place to influence the betterment of society. So last year, just for context for our work here in the US, we awarded just over $9 million from the Community Giving Program, and also deployed just over 120,000 volunteer hours through our employees that are based in that 7-state footprint. And the way that we're structured as a team is we actually deliver our corporate citizenship efforts through a purposeful and matrixed organization structure. So we have a larger team, and as part of that umbrella unit, we also have a set of community relations executives and officers that are based in the various geographies and regions where we have a business presence. And that team is really a collaborator with us in terms of delivering on our giving, our volunteering, community development finance efforts, communications, as well as regulatory performance. And I want to just hit pause for a minute and talk about the regulatory environment, particularly for organizations within financial services. So we are, and this will vary by institution by institution, we are actually regulated and evaluated under what is called the Community Reinvestment Act. And what this act really holds financial institutions accountable to is ensuring that all goods and services are made available to all members of the community, regardless of your income level. So there are very specific activities that we can achieve through our volunteerism and our giving that really help us perform well under the 3 legs of that test: investment, lending, and service. So I say that because the one aspect that I really kind of hope to revisit in our discussion today is recognizing how much we seek relationships, opportunities, and partnerships that also share something in common with our strategy. So while we recognize that our citizenship efforts can have a direct benefit to elevating our brand in the community along certain lines of activities, we also see a very specific correlation with our employees' sense of pride and value for having paid volunteer time off to work with organizations that they are, 1, passionate about personally, but 2, also help us achieve some of our performance goals under the service test for the Community Reinvestment Act. And much of what we're also doing is really working to maintain an outstanding CRA rating, which was what we were so proud to achieve during our last exam period. So I sat back after my conversation with Nancy as well, and really kind of just tried to think about, maybe kind of 3 key themes or thoughts that I might like to share, and you can take it or leave it, but want to make sure I kind of also address the specific points Nancy had, but kind of 3 key takeaways around partnership building. And the first kind of a discussion piece I had was about doing the homework first and really leveraging publicly available information and doing that data mining on the organizations and businesses that you're prospecting to work with. There's a lot of really rich, valuable information that is available online, particularly through the access of GuideStar, which I believe is now Candid, as well as looking at the Form 990s for those corporations that also have an established private foundation entity. I can tell you myself, also as a grant maker and a manager of the program, GuideStar is my best friend when I'm also seeking to understand a little bit more about the programs and services of some of the nonprofit partners we may just not know as well just yet. So there's really rich information that's available. And I think it's also important to understand what are the vehicles for giving that a business has at its disposal, particularly because there are also restrictions on what a private foundation can fund versus what can be funded from the business. So as a precursor to this conversation as well, we just heard about the kind of business development sponsorships for the auto dealer. There are some parallel stories between the giving that we might do from the bank that would also have a direct business benefit to our brand, ticketed events, etc., that are things that we would not traditionally do from the foundation because of how the restrictions that we have on what we fund from our private foundation. So again, just being able to understand where those buckets of resources are located within the company is really important to understand what you can solicit and cannot solicit depending on the organization. Also, within the Form 990 PF, so the BBVA Foundation also publishes our tax return on an annual basis. It's available, and within the Form 990, you will also see a detailed list of both our direct charitable activities, which are the initiatives that we operate, like our Center for Financial Education, as well as grant making to all of the organizations who were recipients of that roughly $9 million last year. So that's a great way to also just get a feel for the range of grant award size. We typically start at about $2,500 at our local giving level. And then for our more significant corporate partnerships, we have multi-year funding engagements upwards of $7 million. Obviously, those more significant relationships have heavy executive involvement and also alignment to what we're trying to do in a market. But anyway, I just wanted to round it back to really doing the work around seeing what's available publicly in terms of information as you look at building a relationship or particularly prospecting. Because the next piece of advice or guidance I have is really about being able to ask those critical questions on if the mission of your organization and the programs and services are truly a fit with the business purpose and strategy. And I say that not to discourage any fundraisers we have out there in the audience or otherwise, but I just also think about, wearing my hat as a former development director, really being the most targeted and efficient I could be with my time. And there were some really interesting comments too about transition at the nonprofit side. I actually think that also holds relevance and bears weight with the corporate relationship. And thinking about if you say, for example, have an in at a corporation through a personal relationship, while that might be an in, if there's not a strategic fit for the program work that you're achieving together, when that personal relationship transitions or moves on, it may potentially become a less sustainable source of funding over the long term. So again, just recognizing, sometimes the answer is going to be yes, but sometimes it might be a no. So look for the next best fit in organizations that you're working with. And then the last piece of advice or reflection I have is really around identifying opportunities for non-cash contributions. And we specifically ask for this in our annual grant application. And as I cited the figures around employee involvement, I hope that it also becomes very apparent how much we value that, both from the ability to support our employees and their volunteer passions, but also to serve our efforts to achieve great regulatory results. So we particularly place a premium on those types of volunteer activities and relationships that also serve a strategic purpose for the business. So I hopefully covered most of our discussion points, but Nancy, if there's anything I glazed over, feel free to pepper me with questions. If not, I'll go ahead and pass the mic.
Just let me ask you, if a nonprofit determines they're a good fit, how then do they apply? Who do they contact? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so this actually comes back to the first point around checking out what's publicly available. So we do have a community giving website for our program, and it specifically outlines and links to our online application platform. We do have a small grants program that is available, runs January through July for unsolicited requests of $5,000 or lower. And then for organizations where we're looking to invest more significant dollars, we actually issue those grants, not by RFP, but on an invitation basis. For context, we're close to 1,900 applications this year. So in terms of volume, it is significant. We use an online platform for us to be able to process the large volume of requests we have each year and keep them segmented and targeted to each geography and market we serve.
2 questions. I remember reading on your website that the other bigger ones are by invitation. How does one get an invitation?
It's about relationship building. So most of the time, these are not just going to be kind of cold call, hey, can I get an invite? So again, hearkening back to what we're trying to achieve, both from our purpose and regulatory perspective, community development in the specific forms of affordable housing, support for entrepreneurship, financial education. Those are really where we devote the bulk of our funding dollars each year. We also do some ancillary support around education, arts and culture, to a lesser degree, health and human services, and then environment and sustainability and diversity and inclusion. Those are all important, and we recognize the interconnectedness, particularly across most funding areas. But it's really about establishing a relationship and building trust, either through volunteerism or being able to see, okay, there's a great new developer that's come in that's doing mixed use development with a certain slot for affordable housing. We really leverage our community relations team members who are based in those markets to also be the informal information gatherers and to have a read on what's happening in the market.
What are the 7 states?
Okay, alphabetical order. Or not. I'll go west to east. So California, New Mexico, Colorado. Did I say Arizona? I'm gonna flub this now that we're online. Texas. Let me write these down. Alabama and Florida. I think I missed one. Alabama, Florida, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Colorado. You can find it on our website. Sorry.
Okay. Now, does a nonprofit have to be located in one of those states?
Traditionally, most are. On occasion, we will work with national partners. For example, if there's an initiative around community development financial institutions, we might work with a national network that serves that particularly body of organizations. But roughly about 40% of our annual budget is managed at the local market level. So there is oftentimes a preference, unless there is a well-established relationship and operating history, to be able to support organizations that are also co-located where we have a business and employee presence.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you very much.
You're
Miss
welcome.
Tiffany, you're on.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tiffany Larew. I work for CAPTRUST as an employee relations manager in our human resources team, but I am the current president of the CAPTRUST Community Foundation. And to tell you a little bit about CAPTRUST and how we got to the CAPTRUST Community Foundation. So CAPTRUST was founded in 1997 here in Raleigh, North Carolina, is where I'm based out of. It's an independent registered investment advisor firm with over 700 employees nationwide and over $390 billion in client assets under management. So we have clients that are in all 50 states, and we provide investment advisory, asset management, planning services to thousands of affluent private clients and institutional investors, and such as retirement plan fiduciaries, endowments, foundations, and religious entities. And how we came to CAPTRUST Community Foundation was back in 2007. We decided to establish our nonprofit through the organization, and ours is a little unique in the sense that our employees are the ones who run the foundation. We volunteer our time. It is a separate entity from CAPTRUST, but we are all employees of CAPTRUST that run the foundation. And so we volunteer our time. We have a board of about 20 individuals that help coordinate activities across the United States for us to be able to provide grants and different things. And I'll say that corporate citizenship is at the heart of CAPTRUST mission. So CAPTRUST mission is to enrich the lives of our clients, colleagues, and communities through sound financial advice, integrity, and a commitment to service beyond expectation. And so the mission of the CAPTRUST Community Foundation is to enrich the lives of children in our communities. And so our focus is really around children and how we can help enhance their lives in each of our communities that we serve. So I'll dig a little bit into some of the things that were on the agenda for today. As I mentioned earlier, our mission is to focus on our community. So in our core values at CAPTRUST, community is definitely one of our core values. And we have found that we have a responsibility to share our success within the community. And so we do dedicate a lot of time, money, and energy to those communities, in particular around underprivileged children. And some of the types of support that we provide, so there's a lot of different ways that we give back. So we have volunteers. So each employee, as an employee of CAPTRUST, gets 16 hours of volunteer time that they can do whatever they choose to do with it. But a lot of our employees tend to volunteer through CAPTRUST Community Foundation events. So we sponsor a 5K and help really run that here in the Raleigh area. And so a lot of our employees will volunteer time through that, and that raises funds for our charity of choice, which I'll tell you a little bit about as well. And so that's one way that individuals can get involved. We also have a payroll deferral system through our company, and CAPTRUST matches that dollar for dollar. For every dollar that the employee gives, CAPTRUST matches that to give to our foundation as well. And then the way that we distribute the funds is through our grants program. And so we have a couple different types of grants that we provide. So the first is our partnership grants, and under that kind of umbrella is our charity of choice. And so each year we choose a charity that we are going to partner with. And our goal is to put boots on the ground, be involved, work with that nonprofit organization for the entire year. And really I won't say all of our fundraising, but a majority of our fundraising is designed to help boost the amount of that grant. And so each year we commit to giving $100,000 to the charity of choice each year. And then also under the partnership grant space, we have our national grant recipients. And these are typically runners up for our charity of choice. As we've gone through the vetting process and things like that, we will select these organizations. And typically we have 3 national grant recipients that receive about $25,000 each. And so this year we're partnering with Team Smile, who's a national organization that allows us to get all of our offices involved to provide dental care to children that don't have access to dental care. And then we also partnered with Respite Care San Antonio, Note in the Pocket, and Parkland Cares this year are our national grant recipients as well. So that's the first part of our grants program. The next piece of our grants program is our small grants, and that is specific to employees only. And so this allows employees to request a grant for something that they're passionate about that fits the mission of the foundation. And so we typically do about 85 of those every single year, give or take. And those are driven by the employees and requested by the employees. And we hope that they have some kind of connection to that particular organization. But to give you an idea of what we've been doing this year, so we've already done over 110 grants and distributed about $360,000 already as a foundation in the first half of the year, which is pretty incredible for us and a big change for us with everything going on with COVID and things like that this year. And then we also have our final grant, which is, well, we have 2 other grants, I apologize. We have a crisis grant. So typically we use those grants for natural disasters, flooding or hurricanes and things like that, mudslides, the wildfires out in California. We'll use the crisis grants for those types of things. Organizations can go ahead and apply for those directly if they have a crisis need. And that's where we've seen a lot of the COVID requests come through as well. And then our final grant, which is new this year, is we have encouraged our employees to find a project. So we call it CAPTRUST Cares. And we've encouraged them to find a project where they can put the boots on the ground and put our funds to use. So we have a group in Salt Lake who is doing a socially distanced build of beds for children this month. And so that is a new way that we are giving back to the community by trying to put resources together in that one space. So that's a little bit about our grants. As I mentioned earlier, our grants range up to the $100,000 for our charity of choice. Some of our smaller grants are usually about $1,000 each. And then also, if you're looking to seek support from CAPTRUST Community Foundation, you can go onto our website, have a portal to submit a grant application there. And the way that works, to be able to apply for a crisis grant or when our partnership grants are open, which is typically the end of the year until February each year.
Just send it to me and I'll listen to it when I'm back home.
Excuse me?
Oh, sorry. Somebody had their mic on.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought there was a question. I'm sorry. And so if you go to the website, captrustcommunityfoundation.org, you can seek out grant information there. And so typically, I think most of the nonprofits that we've supported are children focused. And so when we look at an application, we really want to see how the children are going to be impacted and where those funds are going to go to use. And so I think someone had mentioned it earlier, maybe Timothy, but I don't want to say it's a red flag, but the biggest concern for us is that the funds aren't going to go to the children. And so the administrative costs we look pretty heavily at to say, you know, how much of that dollar is going to go to the children and what kind of impact are we going to be able to make for that organization. And sometimes we will do larger grants. So I'll give you an example. Our charity of choice last year was Corral, which is a local equine therapy organization here in the Raleigh area. And we helped fund and start their second location. And so we know that, you know, those funds were going to build that second location, but what that second location allows for is additional women or young women to be able to take advantage of their program and to be able to have that outlet for them. And so that's how we saw the giving impact there rather than the administrative costs of purchasing and helping build that second location. So we do take all of those things into consideration when we are reviewing our grant applications. So some of the things that we also look for in organizations is how we can be a true partner to them. So we don't like to just write a check and call it a day. We like to engage with those organizations. And I think I mentioned earlier, Parkland Cares is one of our national grant recipients this year. So we're helping them with back to school stuff, trying to get water bottles and things like that to the kids in that community. They are a food pantry based in Pennsylvania. And so, you know, the goal is to try and make them feel as comfortable going back to school and having tools and resources as they're supporting that community in their area. So that's a little bit about CAPTRUST Community Foundation. I might have skimmed over some things. So Nancy, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer away.
Oh, yes. What do you want to see in terms of benefits, or I don't know if we even use that word anymore, but you know what I'm talking about. What do you want to see from the nonprofit once they get money from you? Or
Yeah, the biggest thing that we want to see is how we can partner with them and be able to put our volunteers to use. So, you know, the engagement level from a nonprofit is critical for us. You know, we don't want to just write the check and let it fade away into the past. You know, we want to be able to have a volunteer day, you know, in a pre-COVID or hopefully post-COVID world. We would be able to do that. We've done some virtual volunteering with some of our organizations. We've done, you know, food and clothing drives and things like that. So we really want to be boots on the ground when we're working with a nonprofit. And the benefit back to us is that we get to engage in our communities and support them. That's the most important thing to us, is that we can do that.
what about promotion? Like, you know, using your logo and
We do some of that, but that's really not the priority for
okay.
us. Most of the time, it's our way of giving back.
Okay. It's interesting to me. that the whole picture has changed to me a lot. And before we open it to questions, I'd like to say this to all of our speakers. I've been involved in the nonprofit world for well over 30 years as a board member. I served on 3 boards, and then I managed nonprofits as executive directors, and now I'm doing consulting. I've been doing that for a number of years. And I have to tell you 3 that I honestly think this is probably the most valuable meetup we have held, and I'll tell you why. I don't think nonprofits think of corporate partnerships to any extent like they need to be thinking of it, nor do they know enough. I literally could have taken each one of you today and for an hour. I'm realizing I learned so much from this. So I just wanted to really thank you again for sharing. Now what I see is a very little piece of this giant corporate citizenship picture, and it's very cool. So let's go ahead, and should we open it to questions? If people would like to ask questions, let's see. Type into the chat if you have a question. And there was one back a ways, right, Shannon? Okay, one new message. What is that? Oh, here it is. Shannon's telling me. And this is to any or all speakers. Do corporate funders predict more or less giving within the next fiscal year due to COVID impacts? Who wants to respond to that?
I can start. From our perspective, we're giving more. I don't know about other organizations, but I will say typically we do about 400,000 or so in grants every year, give or take. And like I said, in the first 6 months, we've already done a little over $360,000 right this year. So we're definitely giving more because the need is so huge in all of our communities. So we're definitely doing more.
Okay, Sache, how about you?
Yeah, I was just gonna note that I think throughout our programs, we're gonna see the ripple impact of COVID long after kind of our immediate response is over. So I think the answer is it's not an increase in giving, but it's also in what we decide to prioritize in terms of our available funding pools. And that's really been kind of a critical piece of the discussion that we had this year around formulating a response. We didn't have an increase in our annual budget, but we decided to make some trade-offs in order to be able to support key areas like small business stabilization. We had to kind of give and take from some other large scale initiatives that we thought we'd be able to launch this year, which we put on the back burner. So I anticipate probably more of those conversations around what are the trade-offs with the funds that we have slated for next year versus being able to get additional pre-tax profits from the business channeled into the foundation. But you know, 2020 is a year of ambiguity, so anything can happen.
That's one way of putting it. Timothy, how about you?
Well, we would like to give more than we did last year, but a lot of our things are related to events, whether they, you know, be these like outdoor athletic events or like galas and type sponsorships. And a lot of those events have been postponed probably into the spring. So I think there's probably from our side, there'll probably be more donations in the spring next year than we've ever done in the spring, but they'll basically be pent up from this year because a lot of our partnerships are tied into some of those larger signature events here locally. So, but yeah, we don't have any plans to lower our charitable contributions. It's just a lot of the charities themselves are having problems right now coming up with things to be sponsored because again, ours is not really as much a donation as it is a sponsorship, and that a partnership has to be there for that, and there has to be some type of something happening typically where multiple humans are gathered in the same place at the same time.
Multiple humans. So in May, this meetup did one on virtual fundraising. And one of the things that we all came up with, both as the benefit auctioneer who spoke and two nonprofit leaders who spoke, is the visibility for sponsors is actually greater sometimes with these new virtual fundraising events. So have you been asked to sponsor anything like that?
Yes, yeah, and we actually have some of our events are going virtual, but like I said, we partner, or we do it through our franchises, right? So like Subaru, for example, and because it is relatively new, like typically we might have done like a $25,000 sponsorship for an event, and this year we might be doing a $10,000 virtual event, if that makes sense, because there is actually a lower cost of the event itself.
Yeah.
Typically, a lot of those funds were going to cover the cost of the event. So,
Right.
but yeah, there's also been a lot of hesitancies on, just can that really be executed well? And ultimately, we're not really doing it for the exposure. It just needs to be in line with our vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, what is the purpose of the virtual event? What does a good event look like? And then a lot of charities don't have the answers to those questions. And those are the questions that our team asks, so.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That's really good to know. So Shannon, Cynthia, I'm going to come back to you for a second, but I want to get to Shannon's question because, for instance, who said, oh, it was Sache about being invited. Okay, so in the fundraising world, and let's say you're trying to establish a major gift program with individual donors, we are really big on building that relationship, and the more it can be a true relationship where you're in true conversation, the more likely you are to not only obtain a donor, but to maintain that donor. So how does that look with a corporation? How, for instance, can you establish a partnership? I hate the first question with anybody to be, give me money. Will you give me money? Is there any way you can think of where nonprofits can begin building a relationship before they're asking for anything? And is that even reasonable?
I think for us, it goes back to volunteering and, can we engage our people in a space? And so we've had a lot of nonprofits, need help with distribution, trying to get things out to the communities, and we're absolutely willing to help with that. And that doesn't cost us a thing. We'll do that all day long.
Okay. Yeah, volunteering is big with corporations and one of the things we want to talk about next month is virtual volunteering. What does that look like? So good topic. How about Sache? How do you describe that relationship building?
Yeah, no, and that was lots of questions rolled into one. So to piggyback on what Tiffany said, I actually do think the volunteerism piece is also really critical, thinking about kind of board engagement as well. But I think, to your earlier question, part of it is also about what is the pre-work that is done to understand. And again, coming back to ask those critical questions of, okay, from what I've been able to learn about this corporate entity, I see they highly prize affordable housing and creative placemaking, right? And community XYZ. Also, when I'm looking at who they're funding, being able to see peer organizations or who's my competition and do some of that assessment. And I think also crafting the pitch, because sometimes it is going to be a little bit of a cold call if you don't have an existing relationship. I think part of it is being able to make the case for identifying how the work that you all are doing is actually complementary to the goals of the business and the private foundation. And I think also recognizing when you don't have a relationship, if you do think there's a fit there, go ahead and submit an unsolicited request to the foundation, because that's also an opportunity for us, especially given the volume of applications we see on an annual basis. If there's a new prospective partner, that puts you on our radar. If on our side, we look at your request and also evaluate there's a lot of opportunity, we'll also reach out. So there are real people. It's not a robot evaluating or doing the due diligence on your request. But again, I think it's doing that pre-work, and you guys are the experts on your own mission, right? You are the ones who will be able to identify, direct, health and human services provision may not be at the core of what BBVA wants to fund. So I kind of always reflect back to our nonprofit partners in discussion in this point to ask for what you need. You evaluate whether you think it's a fit and give us your best pitch.
Yeah, and really there's an advantage to finding out if you're a good fit that you wouldn't see with an individual donor. You can't go to an individual donor's website and find out what their priorities are, or what their mission is. They don't have 990s to look at. But Cynthia, to answer your first question up there, to determine a good fit, I think she said it, is that you look at the 990, you look at the website, find out what their priorities are and who they've funded previously. Does that sound about right, Sache? Okay. All right, let me see. Cynthia also has a question about how do you feel about sponsoring virtual events, and Timothy answered some of that. Do you two want to answer that? Sache, the virtual events?
Yeah, no, and I would say that actually reflects the approach that we've tried to take with all of our partners this year, and it's to be as flexible as possible. I think as being partners in the nonprofit sector and industry, we recognize how many folks are taking hits from program generating revenue, whether that's special events or otherwise. So, I mean, we're on board. I think it's just really about having those conversations. Obviously, at this point, it's in advance because we all know we're working in a remote environment. So we're on board.
Okay. Tiffany, you too?
Yes, we're definitely doing virtual events with our partners. So we've got the 5K that is coming up in September. We are taking that virtual, which is also a really great opportunity for us to kind of spread that 5K run across the United States, across all of our office locations, and be able to engage a lot of our employees in different ways.
Okay. Darla asks, when vetting potential grantee partners, what information would you want to easily find on a nonprofit's website? That's an interesting question. What do you think, Tiffany? You're right there.
Sure. So I would say the first thing is understanding the mission so that I can determine whether or not it aligns with what we're trying to accomplish. But also, how do you spend your dollars? Where is the money going to go to? As I mentioned earlier, it's important for us to know not necessarily the percentage, but the priority on how that's going to impact the kids in the community, and how they're going to benefit from us contributing to the organization.
Okay. Timothy, how about you? Do you look at the nonprofit's website if you're not familiar with them, and what do you look for?
We typically, if I'm not familiar with them, we'll look at the website, and for a brand alignment, we look to see what other corporate sponsors they have. So, for example, like with Mercedes-Benz, we're very cautious. So we look to see if we go to that nonprofit's website, number one, what does their website look like? Does their website even look professional? Assuming that it does, then their organizations, have substantial partnerships with this particular nonprofit. And if we've done business, for example, there's one here, it's called ABC Home and Commercial Services, ABC Pest and Lawn. They're an actual business, and they do like the Kite Festival. And anyways, the guy that runs it, he's very big in the philanthropic community. So if we see that a nonprofit, that organization has chosen that nonprofit as a partner, then it's kind of like a referral for us. It's already been vetted at that point. So we don't have a full team that would go in and like do forensic accounting or anything. So we just see who else has already said that this was a good idea. And then, then it goes down to, all right, well, is this something our employees are passionate about? You know, is this, you know, just typically there, since it is local, there wouldn't be too many organizations that we're not really aware of. We might just not have relationships with them, but you know, it's a really big, small town. Awesome.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And also, I just want to point out, when you go to your website, you go to the CAG website and go to the giving link. I mean, I recognized everybody on there, and there's a lot of them that you give to, and some of them are on this meetup today. You know, so I mean, that helps me when I was going to look for people who I wanted to speak. I wanted somebody that was familiar too with my audience. So, Sache.
Yeah, can I just add on that? I think a couple of key things that we look for when we're also checking out folks' websites. One would be consistency. And I bring this up due to the age-old mission creep, recognizing that it is often well-intentioned when crafting the narrative. However, if your grant application reflects your mission statement as one thing and your website as, you know, something different, that's just an kind of a flag for us in terms of just matching the intent of the proposal to the core work of the organization. Leadership is also really important. It's something too that when we're working with our local leaders who also help decision our local grant making, they're also really interested in seeing who else is on the board in addition to staff leadership. And then the last thing I would say, which is a great nugget, particularly when we're in kind of the deeper side of due diligence review, is actually having your annual report, if you do have that available, posted and accessible on your website.
That's an excellent piece. And have it look good. Just a minute. Okay, I got to write that one down. All right. Let's see now. We had a follow-up question from Susanna. Is there hesitance in granting for operating as we engage in research and development to figure out how to pivot programs that are not possible right now, such as saving staff of performing arts organizations, as we perform focus groups to find out how we pivot to stay afloat? Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, for performing arts, so in other words, do you help these types of nonprofits in, well, I guess we would call it operating funds in some respects, to figure out how to pivot?
I'll go ahead and jump in. And I think without being particular to arts and culture, given it's also a smaller piece of what we do, but I also think one of the privileges of doing this work is also being able to support our partners through a time of transition and adaptation. So we do offer general operating support. Again, it's evaluated case by case, particularly which focus area you might fall in. But I feel like philosophically, from a funding standpoint, that was also something that was really intrinsic to our COVID relief efforts, was to get general operating support out the door quickly and swiftly. And again, recognizing that a lot of folks are having to go through this period of adaptation, and that means new modes for service delivery and planning. So we get that.
Wow. How about Tiffany?
I would say it's not necessarily a hesitation, but I want to hear the story. Like, if you can convey the story as to what it is that you're going to do with the funds. So if it is the focus groups, and the focus groups are going to lead to X, Y, and Z for the organization, I think that's the most important piece for us to understand. And if that's where we would want that to come through in the grant request, as to what are we going to do with the funds? What's the impact going to be for receiving those funds? So it's not necessarily hesitation around operating costs, but understanding that story.
Okay, Timothy, how about you?
For us, that would have to be something that one of our employees is intimately passionate about. So we would have to, because there are so many organizations, especially in the nonprofit world, that are like, they need funds now, and those funds will help people right now or help that cause right now. That's typical. Our funds typically go to, things that are of immediate need. which is mostly because a lot of nonprofits aren't actually set up for like longer term. At least the local ones here in Austin, it seems like they're always scrambling. So so that's where the money goes. But if there was to be one that we felt confident in their vision and what they were trying to do, they would just have to, you know, paint that picture for us, you know, a little presentation or something. But it would probably have to be coming from someone we already had a trusted relationship with. It could not be a new request for us.
Okay. And I'm going to take one more question from our audience, from Cynthia, who works for Project Transitions. Timothy, are you familiar with Project Transitions in
I'm
Austin?
not.
Okay. So I know why she's asking this question. She wants to know if you, and this is to everyone, do you ever fund capital campaigns? And if so, would there be a different approach in asking for capital gifts?
Yes, we do. That's done though by the people that I work for.
People that are what?
People that I work for, the people that own the business that I work for.
Oh.
So the capital campaigns, if someone wanted to do a capital campaign, for example, like Austin Pets Alive is in the process of doing something like that. And we've had some with like the Long Center of Performing Arts here in Austin. And that's done at the family level for the people that own this organization, if that makes sense.
Yeah, how do they connect? How do they?
That's all just on relationships. So they would have had to already know that. They would already have to know them. And the request would have to be coming from someone that they trust, and it would have to be something that they would be passionate about.
Okay.
Whether it be like a new wing for a hospital or a new theater for, you know, stage or whatever, some type of major campaign. But yeah, that's more done on a personal relationship request for our organization, because we are just a small business.
Okay. Sache and Tiffany, either one of you fund capital campaigns?
Not unsolicited. We do, but particularly it's been where we have a member of our management committee or CEO on the board of an organization.
Ah, okay.
We
Tiffany?
typically do not.
Okay. I have one question for the three of you. What we did when we had the grant funder panel was people typically think of questions later, and I had them send me the questions so they're not bombarding you, and then I would filter them by speaker and send those questions out afterwards. Would you three be willing? There's not a lot, typically not a lot of questions, but would you three be willing to answer the questions to me, and then I'd of course send them back out to everybody?
Absolutely.
Yes, if you can give some patience on turnaround. We're closing out our annual cycle right now, so on board, but just need a little grace on timeline, please.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Timothy?
Good.
Yes, okay. Tiffany?
Yes.
Yes. All right. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen for a second to do the last few pieces of this. I've really never liked this whole concept. How do I do this from current slide? Okay, there we go. Nope, there. Okay, so I just want to say a few words before we end here and before I thank our amazing speakers. For a long while, I've shared with you that I like to look at nonprofits as having 5 focus areas: programs, operations, resource development / fundraising, communications / outreach, and your people, which are your board, staff, and volunteers. And for those of you who have known me for a while, you know that I'm big on starting each project in each focus area of your nonprofit with the creation of a plan and building a team to help you implement your plan. And, you know, I've held meetups on this, resource development plans, communication plans, and today we have the corporate engagement plan. And when I was designing this toolkit, I remembered how it used to feel when I would run up to these projects, and it was always very overwhelming. I never felt like I had enough time, and there's too many balls in the air. And that's what the nonprofit world frequently feels like. I often worked 60 to 70 hours a week, and I did that right up until I learned and believed that having a team help me to craft and implement a plan was more effective and efficient and allowed me to work less hours. When crafting this toolkit, I recognized several areas that would be ideal for teamwork. And I mention this now as a teaser because next month, we're going to be starting a series for each focus area of your nonprofit. Next month, we're starting on your people, and I will be joined by a very dynamic and exciting speaker, but I'm not going to spill the beans yet, all right? And we will be addressing, we'll cover your board, staff, and volunteers, and in part, what's the means of recognizing and engaging a team to help you, but how do you do it during a global pandemic, all right? Now I'd just like to take a minute to thank these amazing speakers. And like I said, I really feel like this is probably the most valuable one we've ever had because it's newer. It's a world that we don't often get the inside look to. And I think it was real critical to have the three of you speak and speak on what you did. And I know that I still have questions. And this, I cannot tell you how helpful I think it was to have the three of you here today. And of course, I always want to thank my Zoom co-host, Shannon, of Leap to Success and Launchpad Job Club. She always calls herself I call her the wizardess behind the curtain, right? There she is. Hi, Shannon. All right. And then lastly, we're asking you to join us. If you have any questions about the toolkit or any other questions like that, please send those questions to me. Please send any follow-up questions that you have for our speakers. Please send them to me by Friday. I'll get them to the speakers next week, and then they'll get to them when they can. I also am inviting you to join our closed Facebook group called Austin Nonprofit Meetup. I know that's so original, right? You can just go to Facebook and type that in. Then finally, join our Austin Nonprofit Meetup on the Meetup platform. Now, here's where it gets a little funny if you're not in this area. You go to meetup.com and you join Meetup. It takes just less than 60 seconds. It's free. And then search for Austin Nonprofit Meetup. If you don't find it, that means you're probably too far outside of our area. So then what you want to do, send me a quick email and I'll send you the link to get into that part of the platform, and then you just join from there. And that way you'll have the heads up all the time of what we're doing. And I think that's pretty much all I have other than to say thank you to all of our participants, the amazing work all of you are doing, our corporate sponsors, all the amazing work you're doing. I did not realize until I started this to what extent corporate citizenship has grown in the last several years. It's just amazing. So I want to thank you all. And there you have it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sache.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
Everyone.
All right.
You bet. Bye-bye.